Loyal wife built billionaire CEO husband's empire only for DNA test to reveal his secret child with former secretary. 15 years, Roman. 15 years we've been married, and you never once thought to mention you had a daughter. The manila folder slams onto the polished conference table between them, papers spilling out, financial records, a birth certificate, photographs of a teenage girl with his eyes, his smile. Josephine, please, I can explain. Explain what? That while I was going through 4 failed IVF treatments, crying myself to sleep night after night because I couldn't give you a child, you already had one. That every time you comforted me saying, maybe we're not meant to be parents, you were hiding a daughter just 3 hours away in Florence. Her voice doesn't break. It cuts like architectural glass, precise, sharp, lethal. Or should you explain how you erased Bianca Palmer from our company history? How you bought out her shares when she was pregnant with your child and pretended the revolutionary green technology that made our firm famous was yours alone. Roman's perfectly crafted facade crumbles as 15 years of lies collapse in a single moment. I never meant to hurt you, he whispers. She laughs, but it's hollow. That's the thing about betrayal, Roman. It's never the knife you see coming that cuts the deepest. Have you ever given everything to build someone else's dream, only to discover that dream was built on lies? What would you do if the foundation of your marriage suddenly revealed fatal cracks? This is the story of a woman who built breathtaking structures with a man she thought she knew, only to discover he'd been constructing a separate life behind carefully designed walls. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you trusted completely, hit that like button right now. And stay with me, because what Josephine Merritt does next will change 3 lives forever in ways none of them could imagine. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Josephine Merritt's top-floor office in the award-winning Merritt Tower. Outside, Milan's skyline stretched before her, a testament to human ingenuity and architectural vision. 3 of those gleaming structures bore the distinctive curves and sustainable features that had become Merritt Design Group's signature. At 42, Josephine had earned her position as Chief Design Officer through relentless creativity, technical brilliance, and unwavering loyalty to both the firm and its founder, her husband of 15 years, Roman Merritt. She adjusted her tailored charcoal suit and ran a hand through her short, dark hair, cut in the precise bob that had become as much her signature as the innovative structural solutions she created. The quarterly financial review waited on her tablet, a task she approached with the same meticulous attention to detail she brought to every blueprint and stress calculation. Mrs. Merritt, your 10 o'clock cancelled. Would you like me to move up your meeting with the Dubai team? Her assistant Felix's voice came through the intercom. No, I need that time. The Burj Garden Tower schematics require my full attention. She paused, glancing at the holographic model rotating slowly on her desk, a 90-story vertical garden that would revolutionize urban living spaces in the UAE. Just hold my calls unless it's Roman or the board. Of course, Mrs. Merritt. Alone again, Josephine turned to the financial reports, scanning column after column of numbers with practiced efficiency. Merritt Design Group had expanded to 4 continents, with over 400 employees and projects valued at billions. What had begun as Roman's small architectural studio had, through their partnership, transformed into a global powerhouse whose sustainable designs graced skylines from Singapore to San Francisco. Her fingers stopped on an unusual entry. A recurring payment of €15,000 monthly to something called Horizon Foundation. She frowned, scrolling back through previous reports. The payments had been consistent for years, coming from the chairman's discretionary fund that Roman personally managed. 15 years, to be exact. The precise length of their marriage. She navigated to the fund's detailed transaction history, noting the payments had begun the month after their wedding, with incremental increases every few years. The recipient was registered in Florence, just a few hours from their Milan headquarters. In 15 years of marriage and partnership, building an empire of sustainable structures together, through 4 failed IVF treatments and the painful acceptance they would never have children, she'd never heard Roman mention any Horizon Foundation. "Felix," she called through the intercom, "I need you to pull everything we have on an entity called Horizon Foundation receiving payments from the chairman's discretionary fund. Discreetly, please." "Right away, Mrs. Merritt." Josephine turned back to the skyline, her mind drifting to how it all began. 15 years earlier, she had been an up-and-coming structural engineer specializing in sustainable materials when she first encountered Roman Merritt. He was pitching an innovative residential complex to her engineering firm, passionate, compelling, with a vision for spaces that breathe with their inhabitants, as he described it. "The problem with current sustainable architecture," he'd said, hazel eyes intense with conviction, "is that it sacrifices beauty for function. We need to create spaces that nurture the soul while healing the planet." While her colleagues focused on technical specifications and cost projections, Josephine saw beyond the plans to the revolutionary philosophy underlying them. "Your concept is groundbreaking," she told him after the presentation, "but your structural framework needs refinement. You're so focused on aesthetic harmony that you've overlooked material stresses at these junctures." Instead of defensiveness, Roman had regarded her with newfound interest. "You're the first engineer who's actually understood what I'm trying to create. Everyone else just sees load-bearing calculations." "I see those too," she replied with a subtle smile. "But I also see how to make them serve your vision rather than constrain it." That night, over dinner at a small trattoria tucked away from Milan's tourist centers, they talked for hours, not just about buildings but about transforming how humans interact with constructed spaces. By dessert, he'd offered her a position at his fledgling studio. "I can't afford to pay you what you're worth," he admitted. "But I can promise your work will matter. We'll create structures that change how people live, not just where they live." She accepted before the tiramisu arrived. Their professional relationship quickly evolved into something deeper. Roman's artistic passion complemented Josephine's technical precision perfectly. Where he envisioned sweeping curves and light-filled spaces that seemed to defy physics, she developed the innovative structural systems to make them possible. They were opposites who created balance, his spontaneous creativity tempered by her methodical approach. 6 months after meeting, on the rooftop garden of his first completed building, Roman proposed beneath a pergola of flowering jasmine. "We're going to transform architecture together," he promised, slipping a platinum band on her finger. "Create spaces that will outlast us both. I can't imagine building my legacy with anyone else." The early years blurred with endless drafting sessions, site visits in hard hats, and midnight discussions over models and material samples. They were partners in every sense, their professional and personal lives so intertwined that one sustained the other. Merritt Design was their child, nurtured through sleepless nights and exhilarating milestones. When their first major international commission came, the Singapore Helix, a twisting eco-tower that harvested rainwater and generated solar energy through its skin, they worked 20-hour days for weeks, sleeping on the office couch. The completed building exceeded expectations, winning multiple awards for innovative sustainability. Suddenly, their small studio was fielding requests from developers worldwide. Josephine managed the technical teams, refined the structural systems, and ensured each building was as structurally perfect as it was beautiful. Roman charmed clients and created the bold visions that set them apart. "You're the foundation that makes everything stand," Roman often told her in private. "I may be the face of Merritt Design, but you're its heart." By their 5th anniversary, the firm had grown to over 200 employees with offices in Milan, London, and Singapore. Each project strengthened their reputation for designs that were both environmentally revolutionary and aesthetically stunning. Roman's visionary concepts combined with Josephine's structural genius created buildings that seemed to defy physics while harmonizing with their surroundings. Yet their personal life held disappointments that no professional success could offset. Their first attempt at IVF in year 3 ended in heartbreak at 11 weeks. Josephine returned to work immediately, channeling her grief into their newest project, a memorial park in Tokyo, while Roman immersed himself in conceptual designs for future buildings. "We'll try again," he assured her, holding her close at night. "When the time is right." Their second attempt 2 years later failed as well. By then, Merit Design was preparing to go public, and there was little time for extended mourning. Josephine took one day before returning to oversee the transition. The successful IPO made them multimillionaires. They purchased a 17th-century palazzo overlooking the Naviglio Grande Canal and finally took their first real vacation in years, 2 weeks in the Greek islands where they promised each other they would find better balance. Maybe this is the universe telling us to focus on what we're good at, Roman suggested one evening on the beach. We create spaces that transform lives. Maybe that's our true purpose. I want both, Josephine admitted, watching distant fishing boats return with their catch. The firm and a family. 2 more failed IVF attempts over the following years left them emotionally drained. After the 4th attempt, their fertility specialist delivered the devastating news: Josephine's chances of successful pregnancy were extremely low due to previously undiagnosed endometriosis. That night, as they processed this reality in their bedroom overlooking Milan's twinkling lights, Roman held her close. "Perhaps we're meant to create different kinds of legacies," he whispered. "Buildings that will shelter generations we'll never meet." Josephine had nodded against his chest, finding some comfort in the idea that their architecture could be their lasting contribution. From that point forward, they poured their creative energy entirely into Merit Design Group. 3 years of expansion followed, with groundbreaking projects in Dubai, Toronto, and Sydney. By their 12th anniversary, Merit Design occupied a tower of their own design in Milan's business district. Roman had been named Architect of the Year by multiple publications, while Josephine's structural innovations were being taught in engineering schools worldwide. They were architecture's power couple, Roman the charismatic visionary, Josephine the brilliant problem solver who turned impossible dreams into tangible reality. A knock at her office door pulled Josephine back to the present. Felix entered, carrying a sealed envelope. "I found what you requested, Mrs. Merritt. It wasn't easy to access. The records were restricted." "Thank you, Felix. That will be all." After he left, Josephine opened the envelope with steady hands that belied her racing heart. Inside was a birth certificate for Adelaide Palmer, born 13 years ago to Bianca Palmer. The father's name, Roman Merritt. The name Bianca Palmer registered immediately. The environmental design genius whose green building systems had been integrated into Merit Design's early projects, who had mysteriously left to pursue opportunities abroad shortly before Josephine joined the firm. Attached was documentation establishing the Horizon Foundation for Adelaide, signed by both Roman and Bianca. The payment schedule matched exactly what Josephine had found in the financial records. She sat motionless, staring at evidence of a life her husband had concealed. Roman Merritt, the man she had built an architectural empire with, who had comforted her through each failed IVF treatment when he'd whispered that perhaps they were meant to create different kinds of legacies, had a 13-year-old daughter he had never mentioned, a daughter he had been financially supporting throughout their entire marriage. Her mind reeled back to those painful fertility appointments, the grief they'd shared over each failure, his reassurances that perhaps they were meant for other creative purposes. Had he been relieved each time? Had he already had the child he wanted? Memories cascaded through her consciousness. Business trips to Florence that Roman insisted on taking alone. His unexplained absences during certain school holidays. The wistful expression that sometimes crossed his face when they saw families in parks or restaurants. Her hands trembled as she noted the Florence address listed on the documents. Bianca and Adelaide Palmer lived just a few hours away by train. For 15 years, their entire marriage, Roman had maintained this secret family so close to their own home. Josephine rose and walked to the window, pressing her palm against the cool glass. The city below continued its rhythmic pulse, unaware that her world had just shattered. She thought of the structures she'd helped design, each one requiring a perfect balance of forces, every support calculated to withstand pressure without breaking. What happens when the central support is compromised? The entire structure becomes unstable. She turned back to her desk and activated the intercom. "Felix, cancel my meetings for the rest of the day. And book me on the next train to Florence. Is everything all right, Mrs. Merritt? No, she said simply. But it will be. For the first time in over a decade, Merritt Design would function without her guidance. Today, she had a more important task, unraveling the carefully constructed design of her life. If you've ever had that gut-wrenching moment when your trust in someone is suddenly shattered, drop a comment below. I want to know if you'd confront the truth head-on like Josephine is about to do, or if you'd handle it differently. The high-speed train to Florence passed in a blur of architectural landmarks and distant hills. Josephine sat rigidly in first class, the folder of documents on her lap like a live grenade. Each kilometer brought new questions, new memories recontextualized by what she now knew. Their wedding vows: I promise to share my life completely with you. The night after their first failed IVF: some things aren't meant to be. Their conversation about adoption 3 years ago: I'm not sure I could love a child that wasn't biologically mine. That last one struck like a physical blow. Had he actually said that to her, knowing he had a biological child he'd abandoned? She tried to work during the journey, reviewing plans for the Tokyo project on her tablet, but the lines blurred into meaningless patterns. Instead, she found herself searching for information about Bianca Palmer. The results were illuminating. Before disappearing from the architectural scene, Bianca had been considered a rising star in environmental design. Her innovative systems for passive cooling and water reclamation had won several awards. The last mention of her professionally was an article announcing her departure from a leading Milan design firm to pursue independent projects, dated exactly 15 years ago, just weeks before Josephine and Roman's wedding. Since then, Bianca appeared only occasionally in academic publications, teaching sustainable design at a prestigious Florence architecture school. No social media presence. No professional website. It was as if she had deliberately stepped out of the spotlight, or been erased from it. As the train pulled into Florence's Santa Maria Novella station, Josephine felt a curious calm settle over her. The initial shock had hardened into something else, a cold, analytical determination to uncover the full truth, no matter how painful. Her taxi stopped before an elegant Renaissance-era building in a quiet residential neighborhood near the Boboli Gardens. She sat in the cab, gathering courage, when the massive wooden doors opened. A woman with artistic silver-streaked black hair stepped out, followed by a teenage girl carrying a portfolio case. The girl had Roman's distinctive profile, the straight nose, high cheekbones, and slightly cleft chin that had graced architectural magazines worldwide. She moved with the same graceful confidence Josephine had watched 1,000 times as Roman presented designs to clients. Her breath caught. The resemblance was undeniable. The woman, Bianca, gave the girl a quick embrace before she headed down the street, presumably toward school. As Bianca turned to go inside, her attention caught on Josephine's taxi. Their eyes met through the window. For a moment, neither moved. Then Bianca slowly approached as Josephine stepped out. "You're Josephine Merritt," Bianca said quietly. Her voice carried the slight accent of northern Italy, musical yet precise. "I've seen you in architectural journals with Roman." "And you're Bianca Palmer," Josephine replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I just discovered your arrangement with my husband." Bianca's expression shifted from surprise to resignation. "I suppose this was inevitable. Would you like to come inside? I think we have much to discuss." The interior of Bianca's home reflected an artist's sensibility, warm, creative, filled with books and artwork. Light poured through tall windows onto terracotta floors scattered with colorful rugs. Models of sustainable buildings occupied shelves alongside art books and potted plants. It was the home of someone who understood space and light intimately. Photos of Adelaide adorned the walls, documenting her growth from infant to the young woman Josephine had just glimpsed, gap-toothed primary school smiles evolving into a teenager's self-conscious poise. "She looks like Roman," Josephine said, unable to look away from a recent portrait. "Yes," Bianca agreed, setting 2 espresso cups on an antique table. Adelaide has her father's features, but thankfully my temperament. How much does she know about Roman? She knows her father's name. That he provides for her financially but chose not to be part of her daily life. She doesn't know the details of how it happened. Bianca poured the coffee with practiced grace. Adelaide is perceptive. She asks fewer questions as she gets older, not more. I think she's protecting herself. I'd like to hear those details, Josephine said, finally facing the woman who shared such an intimate connection with her husband. Because until this morning, I didn't know you or Adelaide existed. Bianca's eyes widened with genuine surprise. He never told you. In 15 years of marriage? Never. I'm sorry. The sincerity in Bianca's voice was unexpected. I assumed you knew. I never would have agreed to this arrangement if I thought he'd keep it from his wife. Tell me everything, Josephine said, leaving her coffee untouched. Please. The story that emerged wasn't what Josephine expected. Bianca and Roman had been partners during the early days of what would become Merit Design. She had developed the environmental systems that made their first buildings revolutionary, while he secured the initial commissions and created the overall aesthetic vision. We were passionate about sustainable architecture and briefly passionate about each other, Bianca explained, her gaze drifting to a framed sketch on the wall, an early concept drawing for what Josephine recognized as the Singapore Helix, signed by both Roman and Bianca. But we wanted different things. I wanted creative freedom, not corporate responsibility. Roman was ambitious, focused entirely on building his legacy. When Bianca discovered she was pregnant, they had already separated amicably. She had been planning to leave for a teaching position in Florence. I told him I was pregnant just as he was securing your firm's first major international commission. The timing couldn't have been worse. She sipped her espresso thoughtfully. I made it clear I wasn't looking for a relationship, just acknowledgement and support. And he offered money in exchange for your silence. It wasn't like that, Bianca corrected, setting down her cup. The arrangement was my idea. I knew what exposure would do to the firm we both worked to build. I suggested a private arrangement, financial support for Adelaide and my shares in the company paid out in full. Your shares. I owned 25% of Merit Design in those early days. My environmental systems were crucial to its success. Josephine felt a new wave of shock. She had never seen Bianca's name on any of the incorporation documents. Roman bought me out and established the foundation for Adelaide. In return, I agreed not to publicly identify him as Adelaide's father unless she herself wished to know him when she got older. Bianca's expression softened. It seemed fair. I got to raise my daughter on my terms with financial security. The firm could grow without scandal, and Roman could pursue his ambitions. But he never told me, Josephine said, the betrayal still raw. All these years, through our marriage, through our struggles to have children, he kept this secret. I met with Roman a few times when Adelaide was very young. He said he would tell you when the time was right. I stopped asking after a while. Our lives went in different directions. Did he ever spend time with Adelaide? Once, when she was about 7. He attended her art exhibition at school. Sat in the back and left immediately after. Bianca shook her head. I told him then that Adelaide deserved better, that you deserved the truth. He said he would tell you. But obviously. Does Adelaide want to know her father? She's curious, naturally. More so as she gets older. I've told her she can meet Roman when she's ready, but she hasn't asked yet. Bianca hesitated. Maybe she senses it would complicate things. The front door opened, interrupting their conversation. Adelaide walked in earlier than expected. Mama, class ended early because Professor Bianchi had an emergency, she stopped, noticing Josephine. Oh, I didn't realize you had company. Josephine felt her heart lurch at the sight of her up close. She had Roman's expressive eyes and hands, the same elegant fingers that had sketched countless buildings. It's all right, Bianca said carefully. Adelaide, this is Mrs. Merritt. She works with an old colleague of mine. Nice to meet you, the girl said politely, with a self-possession unusual for a teenager. Are you an architect too? An engineer, actually. I specialize in structural systems. Like Papa? The room temperature seemed to drop. Bianca tensed. Adelaide. It's okay, Mama. I know Mrs. Merritt is from Papa's firm. I recognized her from the website. Josephine was startled by her perceptiveness. You've looked us up. Adelaide shrugged with casual honesty. Of course. I was curious about what my father does. Your buildings are beautiful. I've been teaching myself CAD programs. The simple statement hit Josephine like a physical blow. This child, Roman's child, had inherited not just his features but his architectural aptitude. You're learning architectural software? Josephine asked, genuinely interested despite her emotional turmoil. Yes. I'm designing a sustainable treehouse community for my final project. It's not very sophisticated yet, but I'm improving. Her eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Mama got me some advanced programs, and there are great tutorials online. I want to understand how Papa's firm creates such amazing structures. Bianca intervened gently. Adelaide, why don't you go to your room for a bit while Mrs. Merritt and I finish our conversation? Is everything all right? Adelaide's perceptive gaze shifted between the two women. Everything's fine, Bianca assured her. We just have some professional matters to discuss. After Adelaide went to her room, a heavy silence filled the space. She's remarkable, Josephine finally said. Yes, she is. Brilliant, like her father, but with more emotional intelligence. She's thoughtful, compassionate. Bianca's pride was evident. Roman's missing something extraordinary by not knowing her. I should go, Josephine said, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of this girl's existence. At the door, Bianca hesitated. What will you do now? I don't know, Josephine answered honestly. But thank you for telling me the truth. It's more than my husband did. Walking back to the taxi, Josephine felt strangely untethered, as if the ground beneath her had subtly shifted. Every memory of her life with Roman now required re-examination. Every moment of happiness, every shared triumph, every intimate confession, all were cast in a different light by this revelation. If you've ever had your entire worldview suddenly turned upside down, give this video a thumbs up. And make sure you're subscribed, because what Josephine does next will completely change the course of 3 lives forever. The train ride back to Milan gave Josephine time to process everything she'd learned. By the time she reached the city, her natural analytical abilities had reasserted themselves. She didn't just have emotions, she had information. And information was power. Instead of returning to their palazzo, she went to her office, instructing her driver to take her directly to Merritt Tower. The building was quiet in the early evening hours, most employees having left for the day. She nodded to the night security guard and took the private elevator to the executive floor. In the solitude of her office, with Milan's lights beginning to twinkle below, she began methodically piecing together the full scope of Roman's deception. This wasn't just about a secret child, it was about erasing a woman's contributions to their company, about systematic lies maintained for 15 years. She accessed the secure digital archives, searching for original incorporation documents. There, in files that hadn't been opened in over a decade, she found what she suspected, places where Bianca's name had clearly been removed, her signature digitally altered on certain papers. She reviewed the Horizon Foundation's financial records, noting they began exactly when Bianca left the firm. She examined early press about Merritt Design, discovering articles that mentioned co-founders Roman Merritt and Bianca Palmer, before the narrative shifted to feature Roman alone. Hour after hour, she built her case, printing documents, taking screenshots, creating a comprehensive timeline. By dawn, her desk was covered with evidence of not just Adelaide's existence, but the systematic erasure of Bianca's contributions to the firm, a betrayal on multiple levels, personal and professional, private and public. As sunrise painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Josephine sent an email to the board secretary. Please schedule an emergency board meeting for 2 p.m. today. Attendance mandatory for all members. The matter concerns significant governance issues that require immediate attention. Then she called Felix, who answered immediately despite the early hour. I need the conference room prepared for a board meeting at 2 p.m. All materials on my desk should be organized and copied for each board member. And please have my lawyer, Giovanni Ricci, attend. Of course, Mrs. Merritt. Is everything all right? No, she replied calmly. But it will be. She spent the morning preparing her presentation, moving methodically through each piece of evidence. When she finally returned home to change clothes, Roman was in Tokyo, overseeing the final stages of their latest project. She left him a simple message. Emergency board meeting at 2 p.m. Milan time. Your presence is required. Video conference details to follow. At precisely 2 p.m., Josephine entered the conference room where 10 board members waited, expressions ranging from curious to concerned. Roman's face appeared on the large screen at the end of the table, looking tired from the time difference but alert. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Josephine began, her voice professional and controlled. I've called this meeting to address some serious issues that have recently come to light regarding the founding of Merit Design Group and ongoing financial matters that the board should be aware of. Eleanor Vasari, the longest-serving board member, leaned forward. What kind of issues, Mrs. Merritt? First, evidence that the company's origin story as presented to investors and the public is materially false. Second, that company funds have been used for 15 years to support an undisclosed personal matter of the CEO's. And third, that these issues create significant legal and reputational risks for the company. Murmurs spread around the table as Josephine directed everyone to open the folders Felix had placed before them. These are serious allegations, Mrs. Merritt, Eleanor said, scanning the documents. I'm not making allegations, Eleanor. I'm stating facts. Josephine's voice was steady as she continued. Bianca Palmer was paid to sign an NDA and leave the company despite being instrumental in designing our core environmental systems. She has a 13-year-old daughter with Roman, a fact he has concealed from the board and from me throughout our marriage. All eyes turned to the screen where Roman had gone very still. This is a personal matter, he interjected, his charm on full display despite the distance. Unfortunate certainly, but hardly relevant to company operations. It's relevant when the company's CEO has actively concealed information that could affect succession planning, public perception, and potentially create legal liabilities. Josephine turned to the board. Merit Design has built its reputation on transparency and sustainable values. Can we maintain that position when our own house isn't in order? The discussion grew heated as board members debated the implications. Some argued for keeping the matter private, focusing only on financial governance issues. Others expressed concern about the erasure of a co-founder from company history, particularly in an era when the architecture industry was under scrutiny for its treatment of women. May I suggest, offered Marco Bianchi, head of the audit committee, that we place Mr. Merritt on a temporary leave of absence while an independent committee investigates these matters. Mrs. Merritt could serve as interim CEO given her intimate knowledge of all company operations. That's completely unnecessary, Roman objected, his image pixelating slightly with his sudden movement. This is a personal matter that has no bearing on my ability to lead the company. With all due respect, Eleanor countered, the use of company funds for personal matters over a 15-year period does fall under our governance responsibilities. And the revelation about Ms. Palmer's role in founding the company raises questions about historical accuracy in our corporate disclosures. After 4 hours of discussion, the board voted to form an independent committee to investigate the matter while placing Roman on a temporary leave of absence. Josephine would serve as interim CEO, a position she had effectively been filling from the shadows for years. As the meeting adjourned, Roman requested a private video conference with Josephine. When the room had cleared, she sat alone, facing her husband's image on the large screen. "You didn't have to do this," he said quietly. "We could have handled it privately. Like you handled Bianca and Adelaide." Josephine shook her head. "This firm was built on my work as much as yours. I won't let you jeopardize it with more secrets." "I never meant to hurt you," he said, and for a moment, Josephine glimpsed the man she had fallen in love with, the passionate visionary with dreams bigger than himself. "But you did," she replied simply. "And now we all have to live with the consequences." "What do you want, Josephine? Tell me how to fix this." "I don't think it can be fixed," she said, gathering her files. "Some things, once broken, can't be put back together. They can only be reimagined as something different." As she walked away, Josephine felt the weight of Roman's gaze through the screen. She didn't look back. News of the leadership change at Merit Design broke the next day. The official statement cited personal matters requiring Roman's attention and expressed confidence in Josephine's leadership during the transition. No details were provided about the nature of the investigation, but the architectural community buzzed with speculation. Josephine moved into the CEO's office with little ceremony. She'd been making most of the operational decisions for years. Now she simply had the title to match. The executive team, accustomed to receiving their real direction from her anyway, adjusted smoothly to the new arrangement. In the weeks that followed, Josephine threw herself into running the company while the divorce proceedings began. She moved into a downtown apartment, leaving the palazzo they had shared to Roman upon his return from Tokyo. The space felt hollow without her personal touches anyway. She was reviewing designs for their newest project one evening when her assistant announced an unexpected visitor, Bianca Palmer. "I'm sorry to come unannounced," Bianca said, standing in Josephine's office doorway. "But after our meeting, I felt we had unfinished business." "Come in," Josephine replied, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I'm surprised to see you in Milan. Adelaide is at a special architecture workshop this week." Bianca sat, setting a portfolio on her lap. "I wanted to give you something." She opened the portfolio and removed several design sketches, hand-drawn concepts for environmental systems, dated from the founding days of the firm. "These are my original designs," Bianca explained. "The ones that helped launch the company. I thought they might be useful for your case with the board." Josephine studied the drawings, recognizing elements that remained in their current sustainable buildings. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you deserve the truth. And because I believe in giving credit where it's due, both yours and mine." Bianca hesitated. "Also, Adelaide has been asking more questions about her father. Meeting you seems to have triggered her curiosity." "What have you told her?" "The truth. That her father is a complicated man who made choices that prioritized his business over personal relationships." Bianca's gaze was direct. "I've never vilified Roman to Adelaide. Children need to form their own opinions about their parents." Josephine felt unexpected respect for this woman who could have been her rival but instead seemed like an ally. "Has Adelaide asked to meet him?" "Yes, she wants to know the man behind the company she's researched so thoroughly." Bianca smiled slightly. "She's methodical like both her parents. She's prepared a list of questions." "And how do you feel about that?" "I've always told Adelaide she could meet her father when she was ready. I think she's ready now." Bianca studied Josephine carefully. "The question is whether Roman is ready to be a father." Josephine thought about the man she had married, brilliant, ambitious, but emotionally guarded. "I don't know if he is, but maybe it's time he learned. Would you help facilitate that meeting? Adelaide respects you after your brief encounter. She thinks you're, and I quote, seriously brilliant and probably the real genius behind those structures." Despite everything, Josephine laughed. "Perceptive kid. Very. So, will you help?" The request was unexpected. Arranging a meeting between her soon-to-be ex-husband and his secret daughter seemed beyond the call of duty. And yet, something about making this right appealed to her sense of justice. "I'll help," she finally said. "Not for Roman, but for Adelaide. She deserves to know her father, even if just to understand the parts of herself that come from that heritage." "Thank you." Bianca stood to leave but paused at the door. "Josephine, for what it's worth, I think you're extraordinary. Building what you have, accomplishing what you've done, it's remarkable. Don't let Roman's betrayal diminish that." After Bianca left, Josephine sat quietly in her office, contemplating the strange alliance she'd just formed with the mother of her husband's secret child. It wasn't what she had expected when she discovered those financial records. But perhaps it was what she needed, another woman who understood both Roman's brilliance and his fundamental flaws. 3 months into the separation, with the company stabilizing under Josephine's leadership and the divorce proceedings moving forward, she arranged the meeting between Roman and Adelaide at a neutral location, a private room in Milan's Museum of Science and Technology, a place that might interest a technically minded 13-year-old. The evening before the scheduled meeting, Roman called Josephine for the first time in weeks. His voice sounded different, humbler perhaps, or simply stripped of the confidence that had always defined him. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his tone revealing his anxiety. "Meeting my daughter for the first time. Formally, I mean." "It's what Adelaide wants," Josephine replied simply. "And it's long overdue. Will you be there?" "Bianca and I will both be there initially, but we'll give you some time alone with her." A pause stretched across the line. "Josephine," he hesitated. "Thank you for arranging this. I know you have no reason to do anything for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for a 13-year-old girl who deserves to know her father." After hanging up, Josephine stood at her apartment window, watching Milan's skyline shimmer in the evening light. The Merit Tower stood illuminated against the darkening sky, a constant reminder of what they'd built together and what had been broken. Part of her still couldn't believe she was facilitating this meeting, playing peacemaker between her soon-to-be ex-husband and the child he'd hidden from her throughout their marriage. Yet another part understood exactly why she was doing it. That part had seen Adelaide's eyes light up when she talked about architecture, had recognized the quiet intelligence in her manner, had felt an inexplicable connection to this child who represented both betrayal and innocence. The next day, Josephine arrived at the museum 30 minutes early to ensure everything was prepared. The private room had been set up with comfortable seating and architectural models, including miniature versions of several Merit design buildings. She'd chosen the venue carefully, thinking a traditional meeting in an office or restaurant would be too intimidating for Adelaide and too impersonal for such a significant encounter. Bianca and Adelaide arrived next. The girl looked both nervous and determined, dressed in what was clearly her best outfit, a structured blue dress that made her eyes, so like Roman's, stand out even more prominently. "Thank you for arranging this," Adelaide said to Josephine with surprising formality. "I appreciate your help." "You're welcome," Josephine replied, touched by her maturity. "How are you feeling about meeting your father?" Adelaide considered the question seriously. "Curious. A little nervous. But mostly I just want answers." "That's understandable. Mama says you run the company now." "Temporarily," Josephine clarified. "While some business matters get sorted out." "You should keep running it," Adelaide said with the directness of youth. "From what I've researched, the stock price has gone up 15% since you took over." Josephine raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You've been tracking our stock price?" "I set up alerts," Adelaide shrugged. "I like to know what's happening with Papa's company." She glanced at the models. "Your company now, I guess." Before Josephine could respond, the door opened and Roman entered. He looked different than he had 3 months ago, thinner, with slight shadows under his eyes, his customary aura of command notably diminished. His gaze went immediately to Adelaide, and Josephine saw something she'd rarely witnessed in her husband: uncertainty. The meeting itself was awkward at first, with Adelaide studying Roman with the same analytical gaze Josephine had seen her husband use in countless business meetings. Bianca stood protectively near her daughter while Josephine maintained a professional distance. "You look like your website photos," Adelaide said finally, breaking the silence. "But older in person." Roman laughed, tension visibly leaving his shoulders. "That's because companies use photos from 5 years ago. Marketing prefers when executives look younger." "That's misleading," Adelaide observed. "Mama says authenticity matters more than appearance." "Your mother is a wise woman." Adelaide nodded. "She is. She's also really talented. Did you know she still designs environmental systems for sustainable buildings? Her innovations are being used in 3 major European projects this year." Roman looked genuinely surprised, glancing at Bianca. "I didn't know that." "There's a lot you don't know," Adelaide said, not unkindly but matter-of-factly. "That's why I wanted to meet you, to fill in the gaps." "What would you like to know?" "Everything," Adelaide replied simply. "But we can start with why you didn't want to be my dad." The directness of the question hung in the air. Josephine watched Roman struggle with how to answer, his usual corporate polish failing him in the face of his daughter's honest inquiry. "I made a mistake," Roman finally said. "A serious one. I convinced myself that the company was more important than anything else, more important than relationships, more important than family. I was wrong." Adelaide considered this. "Mama says everyone makes mistakes. It's what you do afterward that matters." "Your mom is right again." Roman looked at Bianca with newfound respect. "I'm trying to fix my mistakes now, even though it might be too late for some of them." After that exchange, the conversation flowed more naturally. Adelaide shared her interest in sustainable architecture and design. Roman listened attentively, asking questions that revealed genuine interest rather than polite obligation. "I've been working on integrating vertical gardens with structural supports," Adelaide explained, growing animated. "If the plants are properly selected and positioned, they can actually reduce wind stress on tall buildings while providing natural cooling." "That's fascinating," Roman said, genuine admiration in his voice. "Have you considered how the root systems might interact with the building materials over time?" Adelaide launched into a detailed technical explanation that would have been advanced for someone twice her age. Roman responded with thoughtful suggestions, and soon they were deep in conversation about sustainable design challenges and solutions. Watching them, Josephine felt a complex mixture of emotions, sadness for what might have been, anger at the years of deception, but also a strange sense of closure. This was the final piece of understanding who Roman Merritt truly was, a brilliant but flawed man who had made choices that prioritized achievement over authenticity. Eventually, Bianca touched Josephine's arm. "Let's give them some time alone," she suggested quietly. As they walked to the museum cafe, Bianca said, "Thank you for doing this. It can't be easy." "It's not," Josephine admitted. "But it feels right somehow, like closing a circle." "What will you do after the divorce?" Bianca asked. "Will you stay with the company?" "I built that company as much as he did. I'm not walking away from it." Josephine's determination was evident in her voice. "The board has seen what I can do these past 3 months. Roman's absence has only highlighted how much of the operation I've always managed." "Good. The world needs more women who don't step aside for men's mistakes." They sat with their coffees, 2 women connected by the same man but finding unexpected common ground in their own right. "You know," Bianca said thoughtfully, "I always wondered about you. When I saw you in architecture magazines with Roman, you seemed so poised, so perfect. I imagined you as this corporate ice queen who had everything figured out." "Far from it," Josephine replied with a small smile. "I just got very good at projecting confidence." "Well, the reality is much more impressive than my imagination. You've handled all this with remarkable grace." "I've had my moments. Just ask Felix about the day I threw a scale model across my office." They shared a laugh, the absurdity of their situation suddenly striking them both. Life is strange, isn't it? Bianca mused. If someone had told me 3 months ago that I'd be sitting in a museum cafe with Roman Merritt's wife while he finally gets to know his daughter, I'd have thought they were crazy. Ex-wife. Soon enough, Josephine corrected. Are you sad about that? Despite everything? Josephine considered the question honestly. Yes and no. I'm mourning what I thought we had, not what we actually had. There's a difference. When they returned an hour later, they found Roman and Adelaide deep in conversation over a laptop, examining digital renderings of a concept Adelaide had designed, a floating educational center that harvested tidal energy. This concept is brilliant, Roman was saying. The way you've integrated the energy collection systems with the structural elements is seamless. Adelaide beamed with pride. Thanks. I've been working on it for months. The scene struck Josephine powerfully. This was the Roman she had fallen in love with, passionate about innovative design and genuinely engaged with a young mind. For all his flaws, his brilliance and enthusiasm were real. As they prepared to leave, Adelaide surprised everyone by turning to Josephine. Mama says you're really good at structural engineering and making seemingly impossible designs work efficiently. I try to be, Josephine replied, touched by the girl's recognition. Maybe you could look at my designs sometime. I think the floating structure has some stability issues in high winds. I'd be happy to, she said, meaning it despite everything. Adelaide then turned to Roman. Can we do this again? Maybe visit the company sometime? I'd like that very much, Roman said, his voice thick with emotion. Whenever you want. As Bianca and Adelaide departed, Roman and Josephine stood silently watching them go. She's extraordinary, Roman finally said. Yes, she is. You've missed 13 years of that. I know. The regret in his voice was palpable. Another mistake I can never fully repair. Josephine studied the man she had married, seeing him with new clarity. You know what your problem is, Roman? You spend your life so focused on creating a legacy that you miss the actual legacy right in front of you. I'm beginning to understand that. He turned to her, his expression more vulnerable than she'd seen in years. I've been doing a lot of thinking during this separation, about us, about the company, about everything I've done wrong. And what conclusions have you reached? That I've spent my life taking credit for other people's work, yours, Bianca's. That I've been so focused on creating my legacy that I never considered the cost to the people who helped build it. He looked away. That I lost the two most important women in my life because I couldn't be honest about what really mattered. Josephine felt the weight of 15 years between them, the successes, the losses, the betrayals, and the love that had once seemed unshakable. I've drafted a new ownership structure for Merit Design, he continued, pulling documents from his briefcase. It transfers significant equity to you and creates a trust for Adelaide. It also formally credits Bianca as a founding designer with appropriate financial recognition. Josephine stared at him, searching for the catch. Why would you do that? Because it's right. You built that company as much as I did, more in many ways. And because I've realized some things about myself that aren't particularly flattering. Such as the fact that I've been terrified of failure my entire life. That I've defined myself entirely by my success. That I couldn't bear the thought of you seeing me as anything less than perfect. I never needed you to be perfect, Roman, Josephine said quietly. I just needed you to be honest. I know that now. Too late, probably, but I know it. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after betrayal, hit that like button right now. Do you think someone can truly change after deceiving those closest to them for years? Or are some breaches of trust simply unforgivable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Over the next few weeks, Josephine found herself in the unexpected position of facilitating a growing relationship between Adelaide and Roman. Despite her initial reluctance, she recognized the importance of this connection, Not just for Adelaide, who deserved to know her father, but also for Roman, who seemed genuinely committed to becoming a better person through this relationship. She observed their interactions with professional detachment at first, maintaining boundaries that protected her still raw emotions. But as Adelaide began visiting the Merit design offices regularly, Josephine found herself drawn into their conversations, particularly when they touched on the technical aspects of Adelaide's developing designs. The cantilever system needs additional support here, she pointed out during one session in the company's modeling lab. Your concept is beautiful, but physics is uncompromising. Adelaide's eyes lit up. You're right. I hadn't considered the stress factors at that junction. Josephine always sees the structural weaknesses that others miss, Roman commented. It's what makes her such an effective leader. The compliment, delivered without his usual charm offensive, caught Josephine off guard. It felt sincere in a way his past praise had sometimes not. These tentative new dynamics were complicated by the ongoing divorce proceedings and the independent committee's investigation into Merit Design's founding. The committee had interviewed dozens of early employees and reviewed thousands of documents, gradually piecing together the true history of the company. For months after Josephine's discovery of Adelaide's existence, the committee delivered its findings to the board. Josephine and Roman were both present, sitting on opposite sides of the conference table as Eleanor Vasari presented the conclusions. Our investigation confirms that Bianca Palmer was indeed a co-founder of Merit Design Group and the primary designer of our original environmental systems architecture, Eleanor stated. Documentation shows she owned 25% of the company before selling her shares back to Mr. Merit 15 years ago. We've also confirmed that company funds were used to establish and maintain the Horizon Foundation for Adelaide Palmer, Mr. Merit's biological daughter, and that these payments were not properly disclosed to the board or in our financial governance procedures. The room felt heavy with the weight of these officially acknowledged truths. However, Eleanor continued, we found no evidence of financial impropriety beyond these governance issues. The payments were consistent with a legitimate trust arrangement, and Ms. Palmer's share buyout was executed at fair market value for that time. She turned to face both Josephine and Roman directly. The committee recommends 3 actions. First, that we formally recognize Bianca Palmer as a co-founder in our corporate history and establish appropriate recognition. Second, that we implement stronger governance controls over executive discretionary spending. And third, that we develop a succession plan that reflects the company's true operational leadership. After extensive discussion, the board voted unanimously to adopt all recommendations. Additionally, they voted to remove the temporary designation from Josephine's appointment, making her the permanent CEO while creating a new position of chairman emeritus for Roman that would keep him involved in strategic vision but remove him from day-to-day operations. Is this acceptable to both of you? Eleanor asked, looking between them. Yes, Roman said immediately. It's what I proposed to Josephine months ago. She's the right person to lead the company forward. All eyes turned to Josephine. Despite having effectively led the company for months, the formal recognition felt significant, a validation of her contributions that had too often been overshadowed by Roman's charismatic presence. I accept, she said simply. And I believe these changes will strengthen Merit Design for the future. After the meeting, Roman approached her in the hallway. Congratulations, CEO Merit. Thank you, she replied, still processing the board's decision. Though I'm thinking of reverting to my maiden name professionally. Understandable. He hesitated. Josephine, I know our divorce will be finalized soon, but I hope we can find a way to work together for the company's benefit. And for Adelaide. We can be professional, she agreed. That's never been our problem. No, our problem was that I wasn't honest about anything that mattered. His voice grew quieter. I want you to know that I'm seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I built my life around appearances rather than truth. That's good. I hope it helps. It's already helping me be a better father to Adelaide. He smiled slightly. She's asked if she can shadow me occasionally, learn about the business side of architecture. She's certainly capable. Her understanding of complex systems is remarkable for her age. She gets that from you. Josephine frowned. She's not biologically related to me, Roman. No, but she's learned it from watching you work with her designs. Roman's expression was earnest. Bianca says she talks about your structural insights constantly. The thought that she might have positively influenced Roman's daughter despite the painful circumstances brought an unexpected warmth to Josephine's chest. She's a good kid, she said finally. You're lucky to have a second chance with her. I know. Some second chances never come. The unspoken question hung in the air between them. Roman, we can't. I know, he interrupted gently. I'm not asking for that. I just want you to know that I understand what I threw away and that I'm trying to be worthy of the opportunities one still have. As he walked away, Josephine found herself considering for the first time that perhaps Roman's transformation was more than just a performance designed to salvage his reputation. Perhaps losing everything he valued had genuinely changed him. The thought was both unsettling and strangely comforting. The weeks following the board's decision brought significant changes to Merit Design. With Josephine officially installed as CEO, the company's public narrative shifted to acknowledge both her leadership and Bianca Palmer's founding role. The press initially focused on the scandal aspects, the hidden child, the erased co-founder, the dramatic shift in leadership, but as Josephine implemented her vision for the company's future, the narrative gradually shifted toward her impressive business acumen and the company's strong performance under her guidance. True to his word, Roman accepted his reduced role with grace, focusing his energy on strategic initiatives and mentoring Adelaide, who began spending one afternoon a week at the company offices. Despite her initial reservations, Josephine found herself increasingly comfortable with Adelaide's presence. The girl's eagerness to learn, combined with her natural aptitude for sustainable design, made her a welcome addition to the company's innovation conversations. 5 months after becoming CEO, Josephine sat in her office reviewing proposals for a new project in Singapore when her assistant announced an unexpected visitor, Bianca Palmer. Sorry to interrupt your day, Bianca said, entering with a large portfolio case. But I wanted to show you something before we go public with it. Go public with what? Bianca opened the case, revealing conceptual designs for an entirely new environmental system. Adelaide and I have been working on this together. It's a completely reimagined approach to how buildings can generate and conserve energy while actually improving air quality in urban environments. Josephine studied the designs with growing interest. They were revolutionary, integrating living systems with mechanical ones in ways that seemed both elegant and highly efficient. These are extraordinary, she said finally. They could change the entire direction of our next generation projects. That's what we thought too. Bianca smiled. Adelaide has been integrating them into her educational center design as a test case. The preliminary environmental impact modeling is remarkably positive. You're offering this to Merit Design? Yes, for proper compensation, of course. But more importantly, with proper attribution. Bianca's expression grew serious. I want Adelaide to see that creative work should be valued and recognized. Josephine understood the subtext immediately. Unlike what happened with your original designs. Exactly. I would insist on nothing less than full recognition. Josephine hesitated, then shared the idea that had been forming in her mind for weeks. What would you think about heading a new division at Merit Design, the Palmer Sustainability Lab, focused on next-generation environmental architecture? Bianca looked surprised. You'd want me back at the company after everything? The company needs your vision. And I think it would be meaningful for Adelaide to see her mother's work properly valued. Josephine smiled slightly. Besides, the three most important people in Roman Merit's life working together has a certain poetic justice to it, 2 ex-partners and his daughter running his company. Bianca laughed. It's certainly not conventional. None of this has been conventional. But I've learned that unconventional doesn't mean wrong. 2 weeks later, Josephine presented the proposal for the Palmer Sustainability Lab to the board, emphasizing the competitive advantage the new environmental designs would provide. The board approved unanimously, impressed by both the technical innovation and the positive press the announcement would likely generate. The official announcement was scheduled to coincide with the company's quarterly earnings report, a strategic decision to maximize positive media coverage. The evening before the announcement, Josephine found herself working late, finalizing details for the press conference. A knock on her office door surprised her. Roman stood in the doorway, looking more like his old self than he had in months, confident but without the arrogance that had once defined him. "I just reviewed the press release for tomorrow," he said. "The Palmer Sustainability Lab is brilliant. Bringing Bianca back in this capacity is exactly what the company needs." "Thank you." The board agreed unanimously. "Of course they did. You've always had better instincts about people than I have." He entered the office but remained standing. "I wanted to tell you how proud I am of what you've accomplished as CEO. The company is thriving under your leadership." "It was always my work anyway," Josephine said, then softened her tone. "But thank you. Your support with the board has made the transition smoother. It's the least I could do." He hesitated. "Adelaide told me about her involvement in the new environmental designs. She's incredibly excited about seeing her mother get the recognition she deserves. She should be. They're remarkable innovations." "Josephine, may I ask you something personal?" She tensed slightly but nodded. "Are you happy? Not just professionally successful, but actually happy?" The question caught her off guard. For months, she'd been focused on surviving, then on succeeding, then on rebuilding. Happiness had seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford to consider. "I'm content," she said finally. "I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I'm finding purpose in rebuilding the company with proper values." "But are you happy?" She met his gaze directly. "I'm getting there. Being betrayed by the person you trust most isn't something you just get over, Roman. It changes you. I know, and I'll regret that forever." His voice was soft with genuine regret. "I lost something precious because I was too afraid to be honest, too afraid you might see me as fallible. The irony is that I always saw your flaws, Roman. I loved you despite them, or maybe even because of them. What I couldn't accept was the lies." He nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, seeing you, Bianca, and Adelaide build something positive out of my mistakes, it means everything to me, even if I don't deserve to be part of it." As he turned to leave, Josephine felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "Roman," she called after him. "Adelaide mentioned you're helping her with the business plan for her educational center design. That's good. She needs her father. I'm trying to be worthy of her. Of the title, father. He paused at the door. "Good night, Josephine." After he left, Josephine sat in her quiet office, contemplating how dramatically her life had changed in just 6 months. From devoted wife to betrayed spouse to CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. From childless to developing a relationship with her husband's secret daughter. From building Roman's legacy to creating her own. None of it was what she had planned. But she was beginning to recognize that plans were overrated. Sometimes the most meaningful paths were the ones you never expected to walk. The next morning, Josephine stood at the podium during Merit Design's quarterly earnings call, the company's new organizational chart displayed on the screen behind her. "As you can see, we've implemented significant changes to our leadership structure. Roman Merit will continue as Chairman Emeritus, focusing on our long-term vision and strategy. I will continue as CEO, overseeing daily operations and execution." She paused, her gaze finding Roman in the front row, who nodded encouragingly. "Additionally, we're proud to announce the establishment of the Palmer Sustainability Lab, which will focus on next-generation environmental design and sustainable architecture, honoring the legacy of Bianca Palmer, one of our company's original founders whose contributions we are long overdue in recognizing." The announcement was met with applause, particularly from employees who had embraced the company's new transparency about its founding history. The Palmer Sustainability Lab's first initiative will be implementing a revolutionary new environmental system that we believe will redefine how buildings interact with their surroundings. Early modeling shows a 30% improvement in energy efficiency with a 50% reduction in carbon footprint. As Josephine continued outlining the company's strategic direction, she felt a surge of pride in what they were building, not just innovative architecture, but a company culture based on recognition, honesty, and collaboration. The values she'd always believed should be at the core of merit design were finally taking root. After the presentation, as shareholders and analysts filed out of the conference room, Josephine noticed Adelaide standing near the back with Bianca. The girl gave her a thumbs up, her expression serious but pleased. Later, when the room had emptied, Josephine found herself alone with Roman in the conference room where they had first mapped out their vision for merit design years ago. "That went well," he said. "The shareholders seem pleased with the restructuring. They should be. The stock is up 20% since we announced the changes." He smiled, the familiar pride in her business acumen evident. "You always did know how to deliver results. We both did." She gathered her notes, aware of the lingering tension between them, not quite the comfortable partnership of before, but not the raw pain of betrayal either. "Josephine," he hesitated. "I know our personal relationship may never recover from what I did, but I want you to know how grateful I am that you found a way to preserve what we built together." She studied him thoughtfully. The past 6 months had changed them both, her into a more confident, independent leader, him into a more reflective, honest man. The company was worth saving, she said simply. And so was Adelaide's connection to her heritage. She deserves to know where she comes from, to be part of what her mother helped create. "And us?" Roman asked quietly. "Were we worth saving too?" Josephine didn't answer immediately. Their divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, a clean legal break that had given her the space to heal and reflect. "I don't know if saving is the right word," she finally said. "But I think we're worth reimagining, not as husband and wife, but as partners who built something meaningful together and who might find a new way to move forward." "I'd like that," he said, the relief in his voice palpable. As they walked out together, Josephine caught sight of Adelaide waiting in the lobby with Bianca. At 13, she stood on the cusp of adolescence, her features increasingly reminiscent of Roman's, while her thoughtful expression reflected her mother's influence. Seeing them, Adelaide waved and hurried over, her tablet tucked under her arm. "Did you tell them about the Sustainability Lab? Is it official now?" "It's official," Josephine confirmed. "Your mother's legacy is now formally part of merit design history." "Cool. Mama says I might be able to intern there when I'm older." "I think that could be arranged," Roman said, smiling at his daughter with evident pride. Josephine felt a strange sense of completion in that moment. The empire she had helped build hadn't fallen after all. It had simply transformed into something more honest, more inclusive, and perhaps more enduring than before. The truth hadn't destroyed what was valuable, it had simply cleared away what was false, making room for something authentic to grow in its place. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after a devastating revelation, drop a comment below. I want to know if you believe there's a way forward after betrayal, or if some bridges, once burned, can never be crossed again. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about powerful women who rise from the ashes of betrayal stronger than before. 1 year after discovering Roman's secret daughter, Josephine stood at the window of her CEO office, watching the sunset paint Milan's skyline in shades of gold and crimson. The view never failed to remind her how far she'd come, not just professionally, but personally. The year had brought remarkable changes to merit design. The Palmer Sustainability Lab had exceeded all expectations, with its revolutionary environmental systems becoming the new standard for green architecture worldwide. Under Bianca's leadership, the lab had attracted top sustainable design talent and generated multiple patentable innovations. Adelaide, now 14, had become a fixture at the company on weekends, dividing her time between the sustainability lab with her mother and the visioning team with her father. Her educational center design, enhanced with the new environmental systems, had been selected as the centerpiece for an international youth architecture exhibition. Josephine's leadership as CEO had transformed the company culture. Where Merit Design had once been known primarily for its charismatic founder, it was now recognized for its innovative architecture, ethical business practices, and diverse leadership team. Industry publications that had once featured Roman on their covers now sought interviews with Josephine about her management philosophy and structural innovations. Roman himself had settled into his role as chairman emeritus, focusing on long-term vision while respecting the operational boundaries of Josephine's leadership. His relationship with Adelaide had deepened, evolving from tentative connection to genuine father-daughter bond. The therapy he'd begun had apparently helped him understand his patterns of deception and fear of vulnerability. Their professional relationship had found a new equilibrium as well. The raw pain of betrayal had gradually transformed into something more complex, not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of understanding. They worked well together in their respective roles, their complementary strengths still evident even without the romantic connection that had once bound them. A knock on her office door interrupted Josephine's reflections. Bianca entered, carrying design portfolios. "Sorry to interrupt your sunset contemplation," Bianca said with a smile, "but I wanted to show you the final renderings for the Vertical Forest Hospital before tomorrow's presentation." "No apology necessary. I was just thinking about how much has changed in a year for all of us." Bianca nodded, spreading the designs on Josephine's conference table. "Sometimes I still can't believe we're all working together. It's like some strange architectural fairy tale." Josephine laughed. "Hardly the traditional happily ever after. Maybe that's what makes it better. Real stories don't end neatly. They evolve." They reviewed the hospital designs, which adapted the sustainability lab's innovations for healthcare environments. The structure incorporated living walls that purified air, rainwater harvesting systems, and solar capturing facades, potentially transforming patient outcomes through a healing environment. "These are impressive," Josephine said, studying the structural calculations. "The integration of the garden terraces with the patient recovery floors is particularly elegant." That was Adelaide's contribution, actually. She kept pushing us to make the healing gardens accessible from every patient room. Said that people recover better when they can touch growing things. She's right, and remarkably insightful for her age. She's had good influences this past year. Bianca gave Josephine a meaningful look. "Not just Roman and me. She talks about you constantly, you know. About how you taught her to think about systems holistically. She's a quick study." Josephine traced a finger along one of the structural elements. "She also asks a lot of questions about you and Roman. About what happened between you two." Josephine tensed slightly. "What do you tell her?" "The truth, in age-appropriate terms. That adults sometimes make mistakes that hurt people they care about. That relationships can change form without losing their importance." Bianca paused. "That sometimes the family you build isn't the one you expected, but it can still be valuable. Is that what we are now? Some kind of unconventional family? Aren't we? 3 adults who run this company, raising one exceptional child together in our different ways." Put that way, it did sound like a family of sorts. Not the traditional unit Josephine had once envisioned for herself, but perhaps something equally meaningful. Their conversation was interrupted by another knock. Roman stood in the doorway with Adelaide beside him. "Sorry to interrupt," Roman said, "but Adelaide has something she wants to show you both." Adelaide stepped forward, tablet in hand, her expression a mixture of nervousness and pride. "I've been working on something new, a concept for expanding my educational center into a comprehensive environmental learning campus." She pulled up a presentation on the tablet and handed it to Josephine. The slides outlined a sophisticated vision for transforming her single building design into a multi-structure complex that adapted to different ecosystems while teaching visitors about sustainable practices. "This is incredibly ambitious," Josephine said, impressed by the scope of her thinking. "It would require significant development resources," Adelaide acknowledged. "I was hoping maybe Merit Design might consider it as an educational initiative." "Papa, Roman, said I should pitch it formally." "You can call me Papa," Roman said quietly. "It's what I am." Adelaide looked up at him, a small smile forming. "Okay. Papa said I should treat this like a real business proposal." "He's right," Josephine said. "And this is certainly worthy of formal consideration. Why don't you walk us through your concept in detail?" For the next hour, the 14-year-old presented her vision with the confidence of someone twice her age, fielding questions and incorporating suggestions from all three adults. Watching her, Josephine was struck by how seamlessly she'd integrated aspects of each of them into her approach: Bianca's environmental sensitivity, Roman's visionary thinking, and her own structural precision. "We should take this to the Innovation Committee," Josephine concluded when Adelaide finished. "I think there's real potential here, especially if we partner with educational institutions for implementation." Adelaide beamed with pride. "Really? You think it could work? With the right development team and proper resources?" "Absolutely. I told you she'd see the potential," Roman said to his daughter. Josephine has always been able to spot a good idea and make it better. The simple compliment, delivered without agenda or manipulation, reminded Josephine of their early days together, when they'd been true partners building something they both believed in. "Mama, can I show you the environmental integration sketches I've been working on?" Adelaide asked Bianca. "I've got them on my tablet in the lab." Of course, Bianca gathered her portfolios. "We'll leave you two to finish your day." After they left, Roman lingered in Josephine's office. "She's been working on that proposal for weeks, wouldn't show me the final version until she thought it was perfect. She's remarkably driven. She reminds me of you, actually. The way she thinks through problems methodically, anticipating obstacles before they arise. She's a good kid, Roman. You should be proud." "I am, though I can't take much credit. Bianca did the hard work of raising her." He moved to the window, taking in the same sunset view that had captivated Josephine earlier. "I've been thinking a lot about legacy lately." "That's not surprising given your new role." "Not the company's legacy, my personal one." He turned to face her. "A year ago, I thought legacy meant having my name on buildings, being remembered as the founder of a successful firm. Now, I understand it's about the impact you have on people's lives. Adelaide is a wonderful legacy. She is. But she's not my only legacy." Roman hesitated. "What we built together, not just the company, but the partnership we had, that's part of my legacy too. Even if I damaged it irreparably." Josephine studied him thoughtfully. The man standing before her was both familiar and different from the husband she'd known. The ambition and intelligence remained, but the desperate need for control and appearance had been replaced by something more authentic. "Not irreparably," she said finally. "Different, certainly, but not destroyed." "What do you mean?" "I mean that trust, once broken, never returns to its original form. But sometimes, something new can be built in its place, something that acknowledges the fractures but finds strength in the repair." Hope flickered across his face. "And have we found that new form?" "I think we're finding it, day by day." She smiled slightly. "I wouldn't have believed that possible a year ago." "Neither would I." He matched her smile with his own. "For what it's worth, I'm grateful for every part of this unexpected path. Even the painful parts that I caused. They led us here." "And where exactly is here, Roman?" "A place where I get to know my daughter. Where you get to lead the company you helped build. Where Bianca receives recognition for her contributions." His voice softened. A place where we're all better versions of ourselves than we were before. The simple truth of his statement resonated with Josephine. They had all transformed over the past year, finding strength and purpose through the very crisis that could have destroyed them. We should join them in the lab, she said, gathering her things. I want to see Adelaide's environmental integration sketches. Have you ever found unexpected strength in your darkest moment? Has a betrayal ever led you to discover parts of yourself you never knew existed? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure you're subscribed for more stories of transformation and resilience. As they walked together through the corridors of Merit Design, employees nodded respectfully to both of them. Josephine noticed how Roman no longer commanded attention with his presence, but instead acknowledged each person individually, a subtle but significant change in his leadership style. They found Bianca and Adelaide in the sustainability lab, huddled over a large touchscreen display, debating plant selection for the learning campus. What do you think, Josephine? Adelaide asked, looking up from the screen. Should we use native species only for each regional adaptation, or create a hybrid approach that demonstrates how non-invasive foreign species might be integrated sustainably? What does the research tell you? Josephine asked, approaching to examine her work. Mixed results. Purists argue for native-only approaches, but some innovative botanists are showing how carefully selected non-native species can actually enhance biodiversity when properly integrated. Then perhaps the solution is to demonstrate both approaches in different sections of the campus. Let visitors see the comparative outcomes for themselves. Adelaide's eyes lit up. That's brilliant. We could create parallel habitats and monitor the differences, make the very debate itself part of the educational experience. As she excitedly implemented the suggestion, Josephine exchanged glances with Bianca and Roman. In that moment, they were united by a shared purpose, nurturing this bright young mind while building something meaningful together. Later that evening, after Adelaide and Bianca had left for Florence, Josephine and Roman walked to the parking garage together. Would you like to have dinner? Roman asked unexpectedly. Just to discuss Adelaide's proposal in more detail. The invitation hung in the air between them, simple on its surface but laden with potential meaning. Just dinner, Josephine clarified, as colleagues. Of course, though perhaps also as friends. Is that possible now? Josephine considered the question seriously. A year ago, friendship with Roman would have seemed impossible. But time had tempered her anger, and watching him become a father to Adelaide had revealed aspects of his character she'd never fully seen before. I think friends is a possibility, she said finally. We've certainly moved beyond enemies. His laugh was genuine. That's progress indeed. Over dinner at a small restaurant near the office, notably not one of the high-profile establishments they'd frequented during their marriage, they discussed Adelaide's learning campus concept. The conversation flowed naturally from business to more personal topics, Adelaide's development, Bianca's thriving leadership of the sustainability lab, the changes they both had experienced over the past year. Remember when we first met? Roman asked as they finished their meal. At that engineering firm presentation. Of course. You were so passionate about creating architecture that breathed with its inhabitants, and you were the only one who saw beyond the technical specs to the emotional impact of spaces. He smiled at the memory. You told me my structural framework needed work. It did. Your cantilever calculations were completely unrealistic. Yet, we exceeded them within 3 years. Because I fixed the framework, Josephine reminded him with a small smile. Exactly. You always made my visions better by grounding them in reality. He hesitated. That's what I miss most, you know, not the status of being married to you, but the partnership, the way we balanced each other. We still have that professionally. It's not the same. No, she agreed quietly. It's not. They walked together after dinner. The Milan evening was cool but clear. Their path took them past the original office building where Merit Design had begun, a small space they'd outgrown within 18 months. Do you remember working until midnight in that tiny studio? Roman asked, nodding toward the building. Sleeping on that horrible sofa when deadlines were tight. And that cafe on the corner that delivered terrible espresso at all hours. He smiled at the memory. We were so focused on the future then. So certain we could build something extraordinary together. We did build something extraordinary, Roman, Josephine reminded him. It just wasn't what we expected. They stopped walking, facing each other in the gentle glow of a street lamp. For a moment, Josephine saw again the young architect who had captivated her with his vision and passion, before success and secrets had complicated everything. Josephine, he said softly. I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any chance for us? Not to go back to what we were, but to create something new. The question hung in the night air between them. Josephine studied his face, searching for the manipulation or charm that had once been his default. Instead, she found only vulnerability and genuine hope. I don't know, she answered honestly. A year ago, I would have said absolutely not. Now, I'm less certain. That's more than I deserve. It is, she agreed with a small smile. But maybe this isn't about what either of us deserves. Maybe it's about what we can build together, knowing everything we know now. And what would that look like? I have no idea. And that's both terrifying and intriguing. They resumed walking, a comfortable silence settling between them. At her car, Roman made no move to touch her, respecting the boundaries that remained between them. Thank you for dinner, she said, and for the conversation. Thank you for being willing to have it. He stepped back, giving her space. Good night, Josephine. As she drove home, Josephine reflected on the unexpected path her life had taken. A year ago, discovering Roman's secret daughter had seemed like the end of everything she believed in. Now, somehow, it had become the catalyst for a new beginning, not just for her career, but potentially for her heart as well. 6 months later, Josephine stood on the construction site of Adelaide's environmental learning campus, watching as the first structural elements rose from the foundations. What had begun as a 14-year-old's ambitious concept had evolved into Merit Design's most innovative educational project, a collaborative effort between the Palmer Sustainability Lab and the main design team. Adelaide stood beside her, wearing a hard hat that seemed too large for her slender frame, her eyes shining with pride as she watched her vision taking physical form. I still can't believe it's really happening, she said, her voice filled with wonder. Believe it, Josephine replied. You earned this with a brilliant concept and relentless refinement. I couldn't have done it without you. All of you. Adelaide's gaze swept across the site where Bianca was discussing planting schedules with the landscape team and Roman was reviewing the central pavilion plans with the project manager. It's strange how things worked out, isn't it? A year ago, I didn't even know Papa, and now we're building this together. Life rarely follows the plans we make for it, Josephine said. Sometimes the unexpected detours lead to better destinations. Like you and Papa? Adelaide asked with the directness that still caught Josephine off guard. Mama says you've been spending more time together. Not just for work. Josephine felt a flush of warmth that had nothing to do with the Italian sun. Your mother is very observant. She says you make Papa better, more honest, more present. Adelaide studied the structural beams being positioned by a massive crane. I think you do too. It's complicated, Adelaide. Most important things are. The girl smiled, suddenly looking older than her years. I just want you to know I'd be okay with it. If you and Papa found a way forward. Before Josephine could respond, Roman approached, his expression concerned as he reviewed something on his tablet. We have a problem with the Eastern Foundation, he said. The soil analysis shows different composition than we expected. The current footings might not provide adequate support. Josephine immediately shifted into problem-solving mode, taking the tablet and reviewing the data. You're right. We'll need to redesign this section. The load-bearing calculations need adjustment. Can we fix it without delaying the project? Adelaide asked anxiously. We can if we work together, Josephine said, already sketching a new approach on the tablet. Roman, if we modify your pavilion design here to redistribute the weight and extend the foundation depth in this section, he continued, following her thinking immediately. We could actually enhance the thermal mass properties at the same time. Exactly. And Bianca's water management system could be adapted to take advantage of the higher clay content in this soil for natural filtration, Adelaide finished, catching on quickly. That's brilliant. The three of them huddled together over the tablet, each contributing their expertise to solve the problem. Within an hour, they had developed a solution that not only addressed the structural issue but improved the overall design. Watching them work, Bianca approached with an amused expression. Some things never change, she said to Josephine. You and Roman still finish each other's sentences when you're solving problems. Professional habits die hard, Josephine replied, but she couldn't deny the familiar energy that had flowed between them as they worked, the same creative synergy that had characterized their best collaborations. Later that evening, after Adelaide and Bianca had returned to Florence, Josephine and Roman sat at a small cafe near the construction site, reviewing the day's progress. Adelaide asked me about us, Josephine said, stirring her espresso. She wanted me to know she'd be okay with it if we found a way forward. Roman looked surprised. She said the same thing to me last week. I told her not to get her hopes up, that some mistakes can't be undone. What did she say to that? That mistakes can't be undone, but new structures can be built on old foundations if they're properly reinforced. He smiled ruefully. She's been spending too much time with engineers. Josephine laughed. She's perceptive. Like her mother. And pragmatic. Like you. The simple acknowledgement of her influence on his daughter touched Josephine deeply. I've been thinking about what you asked 6 months ago, she said quietly. About whether there's a chance for us. Roman set down his cup, his expression carefully neutral. And I think there might be. Not to go back to what we were, but to create something different. Something built on truth this time. What would that look like? I don't know exactly. But I think it starts with this. She reached across the table and took his hand, the first time she had initiated physical contact since discovering his secret. With acknowledging that while trust was broken, there's still something worth rebuilding. His fingers curled around hers, warm and familiar yet somehow new. I'd like that. More than I can say. It would have to be slow, she cautioned. I'm not ready to jump back into anything. Of course. We can take all the time you need. They sat in companionable silence, hands linked across the table, watching the sunset paint the construction site in golden light, the physical manifestation of their collective vision rising from the earth. If you believe in second chances, or if you've ever had to rebuild trust in a relationship, hit that like button right now. And let me know in the comments, do you think some mistakes are too big to overcome, or is there always a path to redemption if people are willing to do the work? 2 years after discovering Roman's secret daughter, Josephine stood on the observation deck of the completed environmental learning campus, watching as students from around the world explored the innovative spaces and systems that Adelaide had envisioned. The campus had become an international destination for sustainable education, hosting programs for everyone from primary school children to doctoral researchers. At 16, Adelaide had grown into a poised young woman whose design sensibilities were already being recognized in architectural circles. She moved confidently through the campus, leading a tour group of visiting dignitaries, pointing out how each structure demonstrated different principles of sustainable design. She's remarkable, said a familiar voice beside her. Josephine turned to find Bianca, who had just returned from a sustainability conference in Stockholm. She is. Your influence is evident in every aspect of her work. Not just mine, Bianca replied. I see your structural precision in her thinking. And Roman's visionary scope. She's the best of all of us. They watched as Adelaide concluded her tour at the Central Pavilion, the heart of the campus where the Sustainability Lab maintained ongoing research projects. "How are things between you two?" Bianca asked, her tone casual but her gaze perceptive. "They're evolving." Josephine smiled. "We're taking it slowly, rebuilding from the foundation up." "Good. Adelaide says you've been joining them for weekend dinners in Florence." "I have. It started as project meetings that ran late, but it's become something more." Josephine's expression softened. "It's strange, we're creating a new kind of family, aren't we? One I never could have imagined. The best structures are often those that adapt to unexpected conditions," Bianca said with architect's precision. "Like those experimental bamboo frameworks you developed for the campus, stronger after being bent than they would have been if they'd never been tested." The metaphor wasn't lost on Josephine. Very philosophical for a sustainability expert. "I've had a lot of time to think about resilience, in buildings and in people." Bianca squeezed her arm gently. "For what it's worth, I think you and Roman are building something more authentic now than what existed before." Below them, Adelaide had finished her tour and was now deep in conversation with Roman, who had arrived for the campus's monthly operational review. Father and daughter stood before the massive living wall that filtered the pavilion's air, their similar profiles highlighted against a vibrant green backdrop. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Roman had been honest from the beginning," Josephine mused. "If he had told me about Adelaide when we first met." "We can't know that," Bianca said. "But I suspect we wouldn't all be standing here today. Some truths need time to find their moment." That evening, after a productive meeting with the campus management team, Josephine found herself walking with Roman through the moonlit grounds. The sustainable lighting systems cast a gentle glow across the pathways, illuminating just enough to navigate while preserving the star-filled sky above. Adelaide's tour group couldn't stop talking about the water reclamation system, Roman said. "One of the ministers wants to implement it across his country's public buildings. It's a brilliant design." The way she integrated Bianca's filtration concepts with the structural elements creates an almost invisible system. "That was your influence," he noted. "You taught her that the best engineering is often invisible, felt rather than seen." They stopped at the edge of the demonstration forest, where saplings planted at the campus's opening had already grown into a young woodland. The night air was filled with the scent of pine and flowering jasmine from the adjacent garden. "Do you remember our first building?" Roman asked. "The residential complex that brought us together?" "Of course. The one with the structural flaws I pointed out during your presentation. The rooftop garden where I proposed." He smiled at the memory. "I was so certain then, about us, about the future, about everything." "Certainty can be dangerous," Josephine observed. "It closes us off to possibilities we haven't considered. Like the possibility that the woman who found structural flaws in my designs would one day find even deeper flaws in me, and still choose to rebuild." Josephine turned to face him, studying the face she had loved for so long, now lined with new wisdom and humility the years had brought. "I haven't entirely chosen yet, Roman. I'm still deciding." "I know. And I appreciate your honesty." He gestured to the campus around them. "But we're here, aren't we? Building something together again. Something meaningful." "Yes, we are." He reached for her hand slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. She didn't. Their fingers intertwined as naturally as they had years ago, but with a new awareness of the fragility and preciousness of such connections. "Josephine," he said softly, "would you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Not as colleagues discussing a project. Not as co-parents to Adelaide. Just as us, whatever that means now." She felt a flutter of both apprehension and anticipation. "Yes," she replied simply. "I think it's time." The following evening, Roman picked her up at her apartment in Milan. Not in the sleek sports car he had favored during their marriage, but in a more modest hybrid vehicle, one of the many small changes that reflected his shifting priorities. He took her to a small, family-owned restaurant they had never visited before, a new place for their new beginning. No grand gestures, no extravagant settings, just authentic food and honest conversation. "I've been thinking about what you said at the campus," he told her as they shared a simple antipasto. "About certainty closing us off to unconsidered possibilities. And I realized that's exactly what happened to me. I was so certain about the narrative I wanted for my life. Brilliant architect builds revolutionary firm, creates perfect family, leaves lasting legacy, that I couldn't accommodate anything that didn't fit that story. Including a child with a woman who wasn't my wife. So you erased what didn't fit. Bianca from the company history. Adelaide from our marriage." Yes. He didn't try to justify or explain away his actions, another change from the Roman she had known. "I thought I was protecting something valuable, but I was actually destroying it from within. What would you do differently now?" she asked, genuinely curious. He considered the question carefully. "I would understand that real legacy isn't built on perfect narratives. It's built on authentic connections, messy, complicated, and honest. Like what Adelaide is creating at the campus. Like what you created at Merit Design after I left. And like what we're attempting to create now. Yes, if that's what you want too." Josephine looked at the man across from her, so familiar yet so changed. The arrogance that had once cloaked him like an expensive suit had been replaced by something more valuable, genuine humility and self-awareness. "I do want it," she said finally. "But I need you to understand something, Roman. I'm not the same woman who married you 15 years ago. The Josephine who built your empire in the shadows doesn't exist anymore. I know. And I wouldn't want her back." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "I prefer the woman who stepped into the light and claimed her own place, who rebuilt the company better than it was before. Who found the courage to forge an unlikely friendship with Bianca and connection with Adelaide. Who's teaching me how to be authentic even when it's painful." His words touched something deep within her, a recognition that while his betrayal had caused immense pain, it had also catalyzed her transformation into someone stronger, more confident, and more authentic. "There's something else you should know," she said. "I've been considering changing the company name. Not immediately, but eventually." He raised an eyebrow, surprised but not defensive. "To what?" "MBP Design. Merritt Bennett Palmer." Acknowledging all three founding influences. "Bennett? Your maiden name?" She nodded. "It seems right to recognize my contributions fully. Not just as your wife, but as a founder in my own right." "I think it's a brilliant idea," he said without hesitation. "Long overdue, actually." His immediate support, without a trace of the territorial response the old Roman would have shown, confirmed how much he had changed. After dinner, they walked along the Naviglio Grande Canal, the water reflecting the lights of the buildings lining its banks. They stopped on a small pedestrian bridge, looking out over the gentle flow below. "Adelaide asked me something interesting last week," Roman said. "She wanted to know if I regretted what happened, if I wished I could go back and change the choices I made." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That while I deeply regret the pain I caused, I can't regret the path that led to her being in my life. That sometimes our worst mistakes lead to our greatest blessings." Josephine considered this. Did that satisfy her? Not entirely. She's too smart for simple answers. He smiled. She asked if that applied to you too, if losing what we had led to something better for you. "And what did you say?" "That only you could answer that question." Josephine looked out over the canal, reflecting on the journey of the past 2 years. The devastating discovery. The confrontation. The rebuilding, of the company, of relationships, of herself. "I would never have chosen this path," she said finally. "The betrayal, the pain, the unraveling of what I thought was true. But I can't deny that it led me to discover strengths I never knew I had. It forced me to step out of your shadow and into my own light. She turned to face him fully. It also led me to Adelaide, who is extraordinary. And to a different understanding of Bianca, who could have been an enemy but became a friend. And to a new version of you, one who's brave enough to be vulnerable, honest enough to acknowledge failures, humble enough to accept help. And is that enough? Can those discoveries balance what was lost? Instead of answering with words, Josephine did something she hadn't done in over 2 years. She leaned forward and kissed him. Not with the familiar passion of their marriage, but with something new, a tentative exploration of possibility. When they parted, she looked into his eyes, those same hazel eyes that had captivated her so many years ago, now filled with a depth that came only from facing one's deepest flaws. I don't know if anything can balance what was lost, she said softly. But I'm willing to discover what might be found instead. 3 months later, on a warm summer evening, Adelaide's 16th birthday was celebrated at Bianca's Florence home. The garden had been transformed with twinkling lights and tables laden with food and gifts. Friends from school mixed with colleagues from Merit Design, creating a lively atmosphere of celebration. Adelaide, radiant in a dress she had designed herself, moved through the party accepting congratulations and introducing friends to family. When she approached the table where Josephine, Roman, and Bianca sat together, she paused, studying them with a thoughtful expression. "What is it?" Bianca asked, noticing her daughter's contemplative gaze. "I was just thinking how strange and wonderful this is," Adelaide replied. "My 3 parents, together, celebrating my birthday. 2 years ago, I didn't even know Papa. And Josephine was just someone I'd seen in architecture magazines. And now?" Roman prompted gently. "Now we're a family. Not the conventional kind, but maybe better because we chose it. Built it deliberately." Josephine felt a wave of emotion at the girl's perception. "Like one of your sustainable structures, designed with intention rather than following old patterns." "Exactly." Adelaide beamed. "And like my buildings, more resilient because it adapted to unexpected conditions." She hugged each of them before being called away by friends. As she left, Bianca raised her glass. "To unexpected families," she toasted. "And the courage to build them." To Adelaide, Roman added. "Who brought us all together." And to truth, Josephine concluded. "Even when it hurts, it creates space for something authentic to grow." Later that night, after most guests had departed and Adelaide had gone to bed exhausted but happy, Josephine found herself alone with Roman in Bianca's garden. The night air was perfumed with jasmine and lemon blossoms, the same scents that had surrounded them on the night he proposed 15 years ago. "It was a beautiful celebration," she said, gathering empty glasses from a table. "It was." Roman helped her, their movements in easy synchronization. Adelaide was glowing. "You've become very important to her, you know. The feeling is mutual. She's extraordinary, a perfect blend of you and Bianca. And increasingly influenced by you." He set down the glasses he'd collected. "Josephine, there's something I want to ask you." She recognized the serious note in his voice. "What is it?" "These past few months, getting to know each other again, building something new between us, they've been more fulfilling than I could have imagined." "For me too," she admitted. "I know we can never go back to what we were, and truthfully, I wouldn't want to. What we're creating now is more honest, more equal, more real." He took her hands in his. "I love who we are becoming together. And I want to continue that journey, officially." She felt her heart quicken. "Are you proposing again, Roman?" "Not exactly. Not a return to what was, but an invitation to what could be." From his pocket, he withdrew not a ring, but a small architectural model, a miniature of a new building. "This is a design for a house I've been working on. Not a grand palazzo, but something simpler, more authentic. Sustainable, with spaces for work and family and growth." He handed her the model, and as she examined it, she recognized elements of both their design sensibilities harmonized in perfect balance. It has 3 primary wings, he explained. One that reflects my aesthetic approach, one that embodies your structural philosophy, and a central space that represents what we create together. There's a suite for Adelaide when she visits, and a workspace for Bianca when she collaborates with us. Josephine studied the model with growing emotion, recognizing it for what it was, not just a house design, but a physical manifestation of the new relationship they were building. It's beautiful, she said softly. Truly beautiful. I'm not asking you to marry me again. Not yet. But I am asking if you'd consider building this with me, literally and figuratively. A new home for a new beginning. She looked up from the model to meet his gaze. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I've tried to. But I'm sure you'll find structural improvements, he said with a smile. You always do. In that moment, Josephine recognized the perfect symmetry of their journey, from a first meeting where she had pointed out the flaws in his design, to this second beginning where he acknowledged and welcomed her ability to strengthen what he created. Yes, she said simply. I would like to build this with you. As he pulled her close, she felt not the rekindling of an old flame, but the ignition of something new, something tempered by hardship, strengthened by honesty, and made more precious by the knowledge of how easily it could have been lost. 3 years after discovering Roman's secret daughter, Josephine stood at the window of their newly completed home, watching as Adelaide and Bianca arrived for Sunday dinner, a tradition they had established when the house was finished 6 months ago. The home Roman had designed was everything he had promised, a harmonious blending of their different styles, with sustainable systems developed by the Palmer Lab integrated throughout. It stood not in Milan's exclusive districts where they had once lived, but on a quiet piece of land halfway between Milan and Florence, making it easier for Adelaide to be part of their lives. Roman joined her at the window, slipping an arm around her waist as they watched Adelaide excitedly showing Bianca the progress of the garden they had planted together. Happy? He asked quietly. Yes, she replied without hesitation. Not in the way I once imagined, but perhaps in a better way. He nodded, understanding. A way we built deliberately, with eyes wide open. As they welcomed Bianca and Adelaide inside, Josephine felt a profound sense of completion. The empire she had helped build hadn't fallen after all. It had transformed into something more honest, more inclusive, and more enduring than before. And the same was true for her heart, not a return to what was, but something new, built on a foundation of painful truth rather than comfortable deception. The truth, she had learned, didn't destroy what was valuable. It simply cleared away what was false, making room for something authentic to grow in its place. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button for more tales of resilience and transformation. Remember, sometimes our greatest growth comes from our most painful challenges, and the families we choose can be more meaningful than those we're born into. Share your own stories of rebuilding after betrayal in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you found strength in your darkest moments.